DDR is the first type of RAM memory we want to talk about here. And understand, when you look at a memory stick, most of the time you can't tell by looking at it that it's DDR or not. It'll be labeled that way. Now, DDR stands for double data rate. Now, DDR RAM changed some things for us. It's where our memory really started to get fast. Now, memory has always been faster than the hard disk, but when we got into DDR, we really started seeing some significant performance increases in our memory. Now, keep in mind, as our operating systems and as our software has gotten more and more intelligent, more and more involved and larger, and provided more and more functionality, obviously we have to move a lot more data a lot faster, and this is where things like DDR RAM, DDR2 and 3 really started to make a difference in performance on our machines. Now, the main thing about double data, here's where the name comes from. We can transfer data into and out of this memory twice during each clock cycle. Now, if you remember, this is the very same concept as a clock cycle on the CPU. Think of this as the drummer in the data band, okay? And it's keeping time, and so anytime data is moving into or out of this memory, it has to do so in sync with the CPU that's using this data. All right, so the clock cycles do that, but DDR memory transfers data twice during each clock cycle, and so that made it a little quicker right off the bat. Now, this normally came in 184 pin DIMM modules. We'll talk about DIMM later, dual inline memory modules for desktops. And then there were 200 pin SODIMM modules for laptops. And DDR speed is what you've got to watch for here. Watch for this on the exam. Watch for it in real life, okay? The speed of the memory is measured in megahertz. And this gets back to the clock cycle. This is how fast is the drummer playing. If we can transfer data twice in each clock cycle, then the faster we can get that drummer to play, then the more data we can move, all right? So we measure this in megahertz. However, as a marketing deal, I guess, this is labeled as the speed in megahertz times 8, all right? So that means that a PC 1600 DDR piece of RAM runs at 200 megahertz, okay, because it's labeled at the megahertz times 8. So take the speed that it's labeled at, 1600, divide by 8, and you get magically 200. So PC 1600 runs at 200 megahertz, okay? And there's how you figure that out. Now, that's pretty much the bottom line on DDR. Again, if you want to nerd out on this just a little bit, and it's worth your while, go read about DDR out there, in some books or on the internet, and just kind of learn a little bit more. But that's basically what you need to know. DDR transfers data twice during each clock cycle. Make sure you keep up with this idea of it's labeled as the speed in megahertz times 8. So just take it as PC 1600, 3200, 6400, whatever. Just divide by 8, and you'll see the megahertz at which that particular memory operates at.